something strange is going on between Josh Giddey and the Chicago Bulls. While we've recently discussed a Western Conference team expressing their interest in Josh Giddey, we have the Chicago Bulls 2.0, also known as the Sacramento Kings, coming out of the woodworks, expressing their interest in the young star as well. Hello, my name is Isaias Jackson Jr. Thank you guys so much for tuning into Bulls Digest. We got to get into all the news and notes in Josh Giddey, the Chicago Bulls, and now the Sacramento Kings, coming out of the woodworks, expressing their interest in the young talent as well. However, 67.5% of you guys are not subscribed. 32.5% of you guys are. We appreciate you guys on both sides of the field. And look, one thing I love about this time of the year, especially at night, is swatting season. And no, not the armored cars that come through and raid the homes. I'm talking the smacks that you hear on the sound of your arm. Mosquitoes, flies, all types of bugs. And look, I want to see your best swatting impression by smacking that subscribe button, liking and sharing. And thank you guys so much for tuning into Bulls Digest. Let's jump right into it. Unexpected team could be interested in Josh Giddey. See, I read that a whole lot better than the last video. Like I was struggling tremendously. But Chicago Bulls free agent Josh Giddey could be drawing interest from the Sacramento Kings. And I don't think this is a could be. We've seen the Sacramento Kings, of course, look with the talent that they have now, of course, bringing in Zach Lavine and DeMar DeRozan to come through and help out Domantas Sabonis. I would say Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox. De'Aaron Fox, of course, now San Antonio Spurs right now. And so when you're looking at the Sacramento Kings now, they're loaded with some solid talent. They have some good talent there. The Keegan Murrays, they just signed Dennis Schroeder to a 3-year deal, which we're going to get into a little bit later. So Sacramento Kings got some great talent. And of course, they're always in line to make some solid push throughout the season to make you look the other way to say, you know what, some Sacramento Kings, they're top 5 in the West. Hey, you might have to be on the lookout for them. They could be a team that could be a force to reckon with. And then, of course, you get to either the play-in or the first round, and it's a little bit demoralizing once you get to the Sacramento Kings story, in more ways than one. So, outside of that, going into the Chicago Bulls Josh Giddey saga as well, the continuation of it, the Chicago Bulls have been put in an odd situation with restricted free agent Josh Giddey, who remains unsigned as we approach mid-August. The two sides could not agree on a price point for his next contract, but the expectation has remained that Giddey will ultimately re-sign with the Bulls. Of course, that's what we're all praying for. That's what we're all hoping for. Josh Giddey, of course, the amazing facilitator, a really solid scorer for the Chicago Bulls, and of course, could be a better defender, but still you can see the effort there when put on full display. When he has to pull up the shorts and lock in, you can see the defense being put on full display for Josh Giddey. And, of course, it'll be a whole lot better as the potential rises for the man. It just depends on the work he puts on in the offseason and, of course, how he progresses as his career goes on. However, a recent report suggests that the Bulls could be open to parting ways with Giddey, and a few teams have shown interest in the 22-year-old guard, which is just absolutely terrifying to hear as a Chicago Bulls fan. Bleacher Report's Jake Fisher recently reported that Giddey is drawing interest from other teams, and while he has only mentioned the Golden State Warriors, there could be more suitors. Just a huge gut punch, for those that really, really are huge fans of Josh Giddey. And I feel like a lot of Chicago Bulls fans, after finally seeing that you have a point guard that you can have long-term, a 22-year-old point guard that has a bright future, that can lead your team long-term once you get the wheels going for the Chicago Bulls in terms of filling the roster with young talent and also some high-value vets to lead the talent and to help with the growth and development for the team. Then, of course, you start seeing the progression and the success come through the team as a whole. But if you lose Josh Giddey, you lose out on that completely. So going into Jake's quote here, I can report that there have been multiple teams who have reached out to Josh Giddey's representation about having interest in Josh Giddey. Golden State is one of them. Golden State will be interested in depending on the machinations. Yeah, I'm sorry. I messed up on that last time. I told you I was completely discombobulated with that word there. Could go some type of Josh Giddey, Jonathan Kuminga sign and trade to my understanding. So honestly, looking at it, if you're a Chicago Bulls fan, I actually seen if I can actually go back to that comment as well, because I thought it was a solid comment in itself. Because when you see the fatigue, from Chicago Bulls fans when it comes down, to all this with what we have to deal with this Josh Giddey saga. The comment here, of course, coming from Robert J IK5BB. Huge shout out to you in the comment in the last video. Bulls don't seem to want Giddey, so why not? In terms of why not trade for Jonathan Kuminga and switching out for Josh Giddey, which I just don't want to see, because you have a point guard for the future. And of course, if you're trying to dip and dodge to not pay Josh Giddey, then what are you going to do next season when you have to deal with Kobe White? And you're not going to be upset. And I'm saying this in terms of, you shouldn't be upset that Kobe White is going to reject to re-sign for the Chicago Bulls for $90 million when your worth is way, way higher, than that. So obviously, the Chicago Bulls definitely have a lot of decisions to make right now. And with this Josh Giddey situation, it looks like they're making all the wrong ones here, in this situation here. So who else could be interested in Josh Giddey? Here's the kicker here. So, of course, Fisher was only able to mention the Warriors as a team interested in Giddey, but he said multiple teams have reached out to his representation. Giddey is a young guard who had a promising end to his debut season in Chicago, so it would be a surprise if we were not highly coveted. However, since there have been minimal talks of a potential sign and trade, this does come as a surprise. There are a handful of teams who could use a player like Giddey, but a prominent team that has certainly come to mind for many is the Sacramento Kings. The Kings, who are went into the 2025 offseason with a desperate need for a point guard. And while they have acquired veteran Dennis Schroeder, they could be focused on getting a younger player like Giddey to have for their long-term team's future. And you had that. I feel like you definitely had that with De'Aaron Fox. Now, of course, De'Aaron Fox, they've had their fair share of up and downs with his tenure with the Sacramento Kings. Of course, even him going back and forth with Mike Brown for a split second. Then, of course, you see the firing of Mike Brown, and then the trade of De'Aaron Fox right after that. The writing was on the wall that De'Aaron Fox, was getting a little unhappy with his tenure in Sacramento, but you had your point guard, that you were going to have long term. You had your young rising star at the point guard position, and you traded him away. You traded him away to San Antonio. So now you're in this situation in terms of Sacramento, where Dennis Schroeder is cool. Dennis Schroeder is a really solid talent to have. I wouldn't mind to have Dennis Schroeder off the bench. If I'm just looking at it, on the outside looking in, if I'm going to structure up my team, especially looking at the Chicago Bulls, if I'm going to look at a Josh Giddey, Dennis Schroeder, of course, that's just a no-brainer in itself. Dennis Schroeder is really, really awesome at what he does. He can score, he can facilitate the offense when need be, and can take a back seat on the offense as well, as you've seen in Golden State. But Dennis Schroeder, of course, you could get a massive upgrade if you can go for the likes of a Josh Giddey, or hell, you did have your upgrade with De'Aaron Fox. And of course, I've already pretty much talked about that endlessly. So Sacktown Sports, Alan Stiles recently talked about the possibility of the Kings being one of the teams targeting Giddey. And while he cannot confirm the theory yet, there is reason to believe that they are involved. So he says, and I quote, "Were the Kings one of those teams interested in Giddey?" Styles said. "So I sent some texts out. I'm in the process of trying to get that confirmation with either organization. But when it comes to the Malik Monks of it all, from what I've heard, they would not be surprised if the Kings were one of those teams." And look, the Kings, and I made a joke earlier about the Kings being the Chicago Bulls 2.0 with the grab of Zach Lavine and the grab of DeMar DeRozan as well. And of course, you got the same result that we got in Chicago, when you paired those two together. Mediocrity. Zach Lavine, of course, is going to go off for his 20-plus points per game, but then, of course, he's going to struggle in the latter bits of it. DeMar DeRozan, of course, is going to see a couple of injuries throughout the bit of the season, and then, of course, he's going to play a little inconsistently as well. So you're not going to get a really, really great foundation of a team, with these two and no point guard as well, at least no high value point guard for the Sacramento Kings. So even moving on from there, of course, after adding Schroeder, the addition of Giddey seems more unlikely, but it shouldn't stop them from trying. So of course it goes on to continue and says, obviously Josh Giddey is a guard, and they do have Dennis Schroeder on a 3-year deal. But everything that the Kings have done to this point of the all season have told us that they are open to everything. They are open to literally everything. So on the surface of the idea, many fans will be opposed simply because of the idea that the Kings are just rebuilding the Bulls, creating the trio of Giddey, Zach LaVine, and DeMar DeRozan, of course, as we've been joking about. Still, Giddey is a promising player who feels the need for the Kings, and the idea of acquiring him is certainly interesting. Of course, as I mentioned before, why wouldn't you want, if you're the Sacramento Kings, why wouldn't you want to go after a player like Josh Giddey, 14 points per game, 8 rebounds, 7 assists? He can be a walking triple-double when you need him to be. It's just a matter of what that potential is going to look like and how is he going to start next season. And I hope he starts off next season with a brand spanking new and amazing contract that he's happy with, and he can stay with the Chicago Bulls long term. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we're hoping for in this situation. But Josh Giddey, of course, has been electric, especially, of course, after the All-Star game. We've heard it all before. We've seen it. We've seen it, and we've heard it all before. Everything sounds beautiful until you get to that Miami Heat game in the play-in. But Josh Giddey is a point guard that you don't want to lose if you're the Chicago Bulls. I think it hurts way more, for the Chicago Bulls losing out on somebody like Josh Giddey, who's a restricted free agent, where, look, you're telling Josh Giddey to go out there and find, a better offer out there in the market. There is no better offer for Josh Giddey out there in the market. Your best bet is to just pay the man. And that's what it's looking like, as we're getting closer and closer, through the offseason and getting into teams getting ready to come together. Now, my biggest problem with this is, of course, burning this relationship that the Chicago Bulls and Josh Giddey are potentially pretty much going to continue to have. Our best bet here, of course, is to just pay this man. Pay Josh Giddey, pay Josh Giddey. Because now, if we're looking into trading, if we're looking into signing trades, now I think we're just going way too far. I don't think Josh Giddey is asking for an insane amount of money to the point to where it's just like, oh, well, we can't meet that because it's time to trade him. It's time to just get rid of him at this point. Because if that's the case, as I mentioned before, what are we going to do when Kobe White's contract is up next season? And he's not going to resign for $90 million. So what do you think is the right move for the Chicago Bulls? Are you getting a little nervous that the Sacramento Kings have punched their name into being one of the teams expressing interest in Josh Giddey? Are you really curious to see what other teams are interested as well? Or are you comfortable that Josh Giddey is going to be in a Chicago Bulls jersey when it's all said and done and you're not worried at all? Please leave your comments below. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll see you guys next time.